Hey everyone, welcome to CTE 2 Brain and Behavior. This is our presentation.
I'm Maggie Higby.
My name is Brittany Collinsworth. I'm going to be one of the social workers on the case.
I'm Sarah Doyle.
I'm Kira Duke.
I'm Michaela Johnson.
All right, so this is our case study. You're a social worker in a brain injury treatment rehab center, and our client is a 17-year-old high school senior who suffered an injury to his frontal cerebral cortex in a car crash. The job is to talk to his parents and him, and as part of this discussion, they want us to explain the functions of the frontal cortex, and a client is concerned about his ability to go to school. So we're just kind of talking to him to kind of give him reassurance. And his parents are concerned about his behavior, so we'll kind of talk about that as well. So there are a lot of important terms with this section as it does concern the brain. Concerning the specific case study, the neurons are important because they are part of the system that sends messages so that everything kind of functions all together. Plasticity is a very important term because that's the ability for the brain to change, and that's going to be really important when we go and discuss his accident and his behavior and things like that. And then the parts of the brain. So there are three main parts of the brain that need to be explained. So you have the hindbrain, which is the control center for your heart rate, your breathing, and learned movements. And those are things that you don't really have to think about. It's kind of an automatic thing that your body just kind of does on its own. You have your midbrain, which is responsible for reflex action. So that's like your fight or flight response that you get when something happens and you don't really know what to do. And then your forebrain, which is known as the largest portion of the brain, and it's the center of your intellectual and creative thought, your sensory experience, and the warehouse for accumulated knowledge and memories. So then we go into the four lobes of the brain. You have your occipital lobe, which is located in the back, and it's known as the vision center because it translates the signals from the eyes to the brain. And then you have your parietal lobe, which is sensory experience and coordinate movements, which is your balance and everything like that. Next, you have your temporal lobe. So it's crucial for ability to translate auditory cues from the outside world to form memories. And then your frontal lobe, which is going to be the most important lobe within this case, and it helps with decision-making, impulse control, intellectual thinking. And it's also the most complex part of the brain. This is the brain that would have been injured in his accident. So it's important to know how that injury affects his behavior and his ability to make decisions and the intellectual thinking that he's concerned with for school. And then these are just some interesting facts that I thought tied in really well. So your brain forms from the bottom up, starting closer to your spinal cord and working its way up. And it's by the time you are a newborn, it's actually already fully formed. It's just not connected all the way. But your prefrontal cortex, which is located in that frontal lobe, is responsible for your higher order, such as planning, working memory, and organizational skills. And it continues to grow into early adulthood. And this is one of those areas of the brain that would have been affected with his injury. But due to the plasticity of his brain, he's young enough that his brain will work to mend itself and change to the environment that it needs to change into to make for the best results.
Like we mentioned before, neuroplasticity is the ability of the brain to change with experience. This can be through both functionally and structurally. Neuroplasticity is at its greatest point in the early stages in life and declines over age and time. Your brain continues to remain plastic through life, which gives it the ability to make these changes. And as you grow in age, you create synapses that will allow you to reflect on your experiences. And then in order to relate neuroplasticity to our case study of the 17-year-old high school senior and his concerns about education and his future, neuroplasticity allows the brain to recover from injuries because the plasticity helps your brain find new ways to accomplish the same function in a different way. On the other hand, the use of cognitive behavioral therapy would allow you to abandon negative thoughts and create positive ones that would create new synapses to occur. Although neuroplasticity becomes stronger over time and weakens the less you use it, this could help the family feel a little better about the future recovery from this injury.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the importance of human behavior in the development and social work. Much like she was speaking about a moment ago, the brain's plasticity allows changes and developments so that the person can adapt to the environment in which the person is exposed to. That knowledge helps social workers to understand the client's environment creates the changes in the brain. The brain has a few crucial times and sensitive times when it's developed. Some of those times, as we know, are infancy and adolescence. And if it's a crucial aspect like speech or sight and is not allowed to develop, those things will never develop outside of those critical times. That's why second languages outside of the sensitive times and critical times, if you don't know them before that, you'll likely never fully develop the second language later on in your life period. The brain is what regulates the body and the mind. So understanding how the brain works and helps social workers to understand the behavior of the people. The brain development can directly correlate with behavior and how it's developed through the environment. Our mind is who we are and our brain is our mind, if that makes sense. It is who we are. Understanding neuroscience allows social workers to have a better understanding of their clients and what makes them function the way they do. An example of how the brain can affect the behavior is the study of Phineas Gage. Phineas Gage survived his brain being pierced by a railroad spike. Before the accident, Phineas was a railroad foreman who was respected by his men who worked for him. After the accident, Phineas showed a difficult time regulating his emotions due to the damage of his front connections to the limbic system. Phineas has never quite recovered from his accident. He was never quite the same man he once was before. This is just a picture of Phineas Gage and the damage that was done by the railroad spike. This also brings us to another aspect that's pretty new in the neuroscience is neuron mirroring. And this kind of gives us a little bit insight into empathy. Neuron mirroring was discovered when a monkey performed an action and another monkey observing the acting monkey's actions had identical neuron responses. Essentially, I watched someone eat a pizza. They had the same neuron response as I had the same neuron response of them eating the pizza. This mimicking of neurons firing can help us understand how we feel empathy for other people. As social workers, we are dealing directly with clients' emotional responses. Neuron mirroring is a client's actions can help us to understand a client's empathy empathetically. Every person we interact with take a bit of our emotional response. We take a bit of their emotional response with us.
Okay, so just moving on into more interesting facts that pertain to human behavior and the development of social work. all experiences, including the influences of parenting, can have a variety of impacts on the human brain. Both negative and positive influences can play a role in how the brain develops and functions over time, which means that understanding the causes of certain brain developments can support social work practitioners just in regards to creating preventative interventions and therapies with all different types of individuals. And then epigenetic mechanisms have potential to mediate plasticity in early development, but they're also capable of decreasing brain plasticity throughout development as well. And this is crucial to understand in social work practice, as some individuals may be limited in development as a result of these things. There are also a few critical periods in a human's life where the brain is at a certain phase in development. So in these phases, the brain is at higher risk for damage. In critical periods, the nervous system must obtain critical experiences in order to train the brain and help it develop into adulthood. And just progress throughout the lifespan. And this is important for social work practitioners to be mindful of these milestones in development in order to understand how experiences can impact an individual's brain functioning, what options are available for that individual, and what procedures must be taken from that point on.
Okay, so neurons are brain cells, and to be able to accomplish the purpose of them, they have to work together. And the connections that are made between them are from their axons and dendrites, and those are located usually when this happens, it's on two different neurons. So even though they're not actually touching for this connection to happen, it's like microscopically close. And it's just kind of like they just are like this. And then that tiny little space that's in between them is called the synapse. And like I said, it's microscopic, so they're not actually touching, but they're like very, very close. And the connections are made between them, and it's so that they can pass information to each other. And that actual like process of passing the information is called synapsis. Next slide. And then synaptogenesis is the process in which connections are made between neurons. So the connection that's made between them is strengthened when they're fired together, which occurs anytime that you have an experience or an action. So if you're not using them, then it's going to be weak and eventually it will die, basically. Repeated experiences strengthen one's synapses. So as I've already kind of learned, riding a bike, driving, kind of things that take practice really. And then of course, Dr. Combs Ormery, her quote, "Neurons that fire together wire together," and that's kind of just a really good way to remember that the more that they fire together, they're repeating the same experiences or actions over and over, then they'll wire together. So the reason that experience in synaptogenesis is so important and interrelated is because when you're in your infancy and toddler stages, you are having implicit memory. So it doesn't require you to have, this is a memory that you're not like conscious for. So you don't actually remember the episodes, but your brain's going to remember it, so that you don't have to have this explicit or detailed recall about it, which is obviously why we don't remember that part of our life. And then I know this is kind of a long quote, but I think it really summarizes the importance of this whole process and why it relates to experiences and social work so importantly. So this is why the quality and nurturing of early parenting is so important for future development, because synapses form that either tell you that you are a valuable person, your needs will be met, you're safe in this world, or otherwise. You don't remember being left in your crib for hours at a time without a bottle when you're hungry and you're wet, but your brain will remember, and it will affect your relationships and everything else in your life. So like I said, it's kind of long, but it just really summarizes in social work why we have to remember that those first few years are so valuable in the development of children, even though they're not going to technically remember it. their brain is going to remember those experiences. And then, of course, I just thought it was fun. In Dr. Combe-Orm's video, she talked about her yellow lab, Abby, and how much she likes cheese, and that kind of the noise of the cheese wrapper it forms synapses over time, and over and over and over, it just stuck with her. So I thought that was kind of a fun way to remember it. Thank you.
So this is just a references page. We hope that our presentation was beneficial to you all, and we look forward to hearing your questions.